The fine grains are neither a group nor isolated. They have no sense of touch adjacent to each other, and they feel the world without touching it. So they have fingertips that touch only their inner depths. They caress the contours of the grains, but never collapse, never tremble, and simply exist there as a film. The dripping water is an illusion of innocence. It is the transparent arrogance that does not fear even detachment. The only way to prove its existence is to tremble. The soundless, unshakable thing knows the silence hidden in the tremor. Wet, yet not dry. It does not tremble, yet it does not cease to live and breathe. It is a miracle that moisture does not erode, does not coexist, but sinks into the space without touching it. It is a silence that mocks the arrogance of the minute. It is the eternal other that is not involved in wetting or trembling. The wet grain of sand is caressed by the palm of the wave, but never collapses. Water blurs the boundary between the individual and the individual, touching each other but never melting together, not solitary, but not belonging to a herd. Water exists only in the space between countless adjacent grains, smoothly impregnated with light. It is neither crushed nor lost in form, but a tranquil certainty that never trembles. It is wet, but it does not melt. It is fluid, but does not lose itself. It is a toughness that lies deep within its softness, a grain of will that responds to touch but never wavers. It has no name, and yet, as a being that certainly has a name, it remains wet and continues to exist. When the wetness is recalled to a grain, the circumference of the recalled grain before it knew the grain collapses into the humidity called moisture. But the collapse depends on the will that was untied from its contour, before it was named as a contour, as an excessive expectation, before the grain's contour recognized itself, and sinks into the grain as the totality of grain size without becoming wet. But sinking is dissolving the contour of wetness and dissolving it. Dissolution means that the grain abandons the contours of its being a grain, to burn oneself in the presence of the other and to feed on the boundary. Not drowning in moisture, not longing for dryness, the fine grain that dwells in the slumber of moderation does not slip through the space between fingers, does not coagulate in one place, but chooses an unwavering silence. They are grains of sand, salt, or thyme. The dampness gives them a momentary weight, but the weight does not lead to trembling. These are grains that dare to deflect the fate caused by weight to the minute, refusing to be easily diverted. An impalpable will lurks in the nameless fixed point between the dampness and the tremor. A swarm of invisible fine grains name the self-subjective convergence point. When the particles, which did not make it to the birth of water, discard their last name, the dispersing water-form molecules hold only one lie. The particles know moisture, and while they imprint the trace of a drop on the skin, the experience of moisture remains contained within the future sphere, untouched by the dry certainty of language. Not fear of dryness, not longing to tremble, just bouncing slightly off gravity in search of a density to deviate from the condition of being carried. The gravel used to be soft, and every time it touched a drop of water, it would accumulate a nameless humidity and silently inhale the fragmented words that filled its throat. Moisture is a memory, a sign of stillness inserted into the folds of a cell. The margins of definition spilled out from the universe like a geostationary satellite that refuses the wind, given the choice not to tremble. The hardness of the wet and silent that does not even have an echo. It collapses without a name, holding its breath at the critical point of fine-grained humidity that is moist and still does not tremble. It is a momentary sensation that fails to be named, or the very touch of the consciousness that is not me, which disappeared before it fell into this hand. A grain does not refuse to be a grain. Floating between wet and dry, they hold only their mass without being named. I don't think that if you touch it, it will collapse. Collapse is an illusion created by unfulfilled dreams of the structure, and the fine grains do not even have such dreams anymore. A grain cries. After it cries, only a trace of unwet tears remains. This is a technique to fall into the gap of gravity, a technique of complete stillness acquired by losing the trembling. The wind invites, the waves respond, but the fine grain does not tremble. because trembling is the proof of movement, and movement is a convulsion that tries to grasp the outline. Even though it is clothed in moisture, it does not tremble. Even the uncertainty is let go of, and it is transparent in the dampness, as of moisture but is beyond being named a grain.